So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
Small off-duty Czechoslovakian traffic warden.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
Only joking.
I'm the Doctor.
So what is it?
I'm the Doctor.
Alright, dudes, it's time for another episode of It's Time to Rewind. I am known as Bubbawheat. Not the Bubbawheat, not first name Bubba, last name Wheat, just Bubbawheat. This season is Red Who, where I'm covering British sci-fi like Red Dwarf and Doctor Who, and joining me 3 million years in the future via the TARDIS is my guest, Jay Cluitt. How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you. Thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you on, even though, I mean, we'll get to it, but I think this is probably my least favorite episode of Red Dwarf.
Sure, okay. I don't think you're alone there.
Yeah, I was looking at the Wikipedia article, and in like the opening summary, it has in there that this is often considered by fans to be the weakest episode of Red Dwarf.
First one I immediately picked. Scanning down the list, like I want that one. I want that one. I'm thrilled to have it.
And for those who haven't looked at the title of this episode, we are talking about Pete, Parts 1 and 2, which were the 6th and 7th episodes of Series 8 of Red Dwarf, and they originally were released on March 25th and April 1st of 1999. But before we jump into that, Jay, what's your history with Red Dwarf? When did you first discover the show?
So, when you announced you were doing this season, I was like, great, I love Red Dwarf, I'll definitely be on that, I'll listen to all of it, it's going to be fantastic. I've listened to every episode you've done so far on Red Dwarf, and I haven't remembered a single thing that you've got on any episodes. Been just completely, did I watch this episode? I've gone back and I've listened to the synopsis, I've looked at Wikipedia articles, like synopses for episodes before and after, and it's just like, what is this? It turns out, looking into it, I'm actually a big fan of Season 8 of Red Dwarf. And I didn't... I think I've seen the odd bit here and there before. I know I watched... was it Back to Earth? Came after it. I know I saw that. I've seen nothing since. But I don't know what it was. Because like that, 1999 was like my sweet spot for like whatever time and channel it happened to have been on. I was watching it at that time, and I watched all of these, and I really remember these 8 episodes really well, and nothing else. Not a single other second, it seems. So I don't really know what my history with Red Dwarf is. I know I had friends who watched it when Back to Earth came out. Some friends of mine were like, "We're gonna have a Back to Earth watching party," and I was like, "Great!" As I said, I love Red Dwarf. I love all 8 of those episodes of Red Dwarf. And so we watched Back to Earth, and they were like, "It kind of sucks. This one just looks really old now." And I was like, "Yeah, they do look older than the one other season of this show." Yeah, nothing watched since then of it. I'm surprised to see that there are 5 more seasons. I haven't seen a lot of this advertised. Well, I guess 4 more at this point. Haven't seen a lot of this advertised. I don't know where they're being shown. But I like the ones I like. I like the ones that I've seen and remember.
That's interesting that you started with this one, because I feel like Series 8 was a big departure, and it's kind of the odd season out. It's the only season to have 8 episodes. All the other traditional seasons have 6 episodes, and it's got 2 multi-part episodes. It starts out with a 3-parter, and then it has this 2-part episode in it. It's just kind of weird, and it's the one season where they brought back the entire crew of what Red Dwarf.
Yes,
because,
yeah.
I mean, the entire series premise is based on the fact that he's the last human in the universe and in existence, and then in Series 8, it's like, oh, he's just in back to being the lowest crewman on this entire ship. Yeah, and then he immediately becomes a prisoner in the first episode, or the first 3-part episode.
Yeah, I know I must have had some knowledge prior to that of previous seasons. I remember, and this would have been after season 8, but there was BBC here had a series where they're trying to determine what was the best British sitcom. And so they had the whole country could vote on what they thought was the best sitcom, and then they did a 10. They narrowed it down to the top 10, and they had celebrities come on and say that they did a whole episode dedicated to each of the top 10. Then there's a whole other vote, and they deemed it was Only Fools and Horses was what won overall, which is a very British sitcom that I don't think many people outside of the UK have heard of. But that's fine. If you've seen the new season of Frasier, Frasier's friend from college was one of the main guys. That's close as I can tell you to what it was about. Red Dwarf was not in that final top 10, but I remember when that came up when I was in college, having this discussion, people were like, well, no, why would Red Dwarf be in that list? I don't get what Red Dwarf is. Which is a very unusual thing to say about a TV show. So it shouldn't be top 10. I don't understand it. And I remember having like a big debate with people like about the concept of Red Dwarf, about like the setup. It doesn't have an easy setup of like, oh, it's these 3 guys trying to make money all the time. That's Only Fools and Horses. There's more setup you got to do. Like, okay, so they're in space. They're in space in the future, and this guy is the last guy alive, and his friend is a cat, but he's actually a human. He thinks of a cat. He thinks of a cat, and then there's a robot. It's a guy in a robot suit. It's a robot, and then there's another guy who's a hologram who was his enemy, but he's there all the time. Are there any women in the show? No, sometimes, but no, not really. In like 7 seasons' time, there'll be one, and they'll be quite sexist against her for much of the show. But I understand why it wasn't in the top 10. I do get from a modern perspective looking back on early seasons of Red Dwarf, but it's very niche, it's very cult.
Yeah,
but it's not one of the main ones. But then something like Yes Minister, a very political based sitcom, was one of the top 10, which I'd never heard. Anyway, that's a different show. So I must have had some knowledge about it. I must have seen some episodes. I remember reading I read a Red Dwarf book on like one of the episodes of
there's I think 4 novels, I believe, 3 or 4.
I can't remember which one it was. It's one where there's 2 rimmers. There's a duplicate rimmer. Because all I remember is him. There's a scene where they're insulting each other about their own things, and they call each other Mr. Gazpacho. They thought gazpacho soup was served cold, and I go, go warm my soup up, and then just called him Mr. Gazpacho. Anyway, that's all I can remember from the novel.
I remember there's 1 or 2 that was written by both Grant and Naylor, and then they each separately wrote 1 other novel. And one thing that I was kind of surprised, because I believe I picked this episode, I think because I remembered that it had some timey-wimey elements in it, but it had been almost a year since I had watched it, and then I watched it again last night, and I was kind of surprised that this is another episode that actually does have an actual time loop element in it. It's very brief in this episode. Like, the actual time loop is very brief. It's it's either towards the end of the first episode or in the second, where they have this time. I've already forget what they call it.
The time wand.
Time wand, yeah. And they use it against the captain, and he says, "I'll see you in 10 minutes." And then they look at each other, and then they use the time wand, and he says, "I'll see you in 10 minutes." And then they look at each other, and this goes on for a good 30 seconds. Like, there's 5 or 6 repetitions.
It's one of those things where you think, okay, this is funny. Okay, it's funny. Okay, it's not funny anymore. Oh, it's not funny. It gets back to being funny again, because they just keep on doing it until it's funny again.
Yeah, it's very...
That's halfway through the second episode, I think.
Yeah, it's very Sideshow Bob with the rakes.
Exactly, yes. Back to Frasier again.
Yeah. And I guess you could say that there is, like, not a time loop element, but there is a very repetitive nature to this episode because of how often the Rimmer and Lister specifically walk down the hallway to see the captain and get yelled at for one thing or another. And the one thing that does always make me laugh in that repetition, I did think it got kind of old, but I did love the Rimmer salute followed by Lister just putting his hand up the wave.
Yeah, the Rimmer salute getting increasingly more elaborate. It's fun. I enjoy. I like Rimmer. I can understand why he can be quite annoying. He's an annoying character, but Chris Barry does a wonderful job with him.
Yeah, I think we've talked about Rimmer quite a bit about how he is just such an interesting, like, he's kind of the most interesting character because he's not likable, but Chris Barry manages to make him likable, and he's kind of has the most depth to him because he has this backstory which makes him a bit more sympathetic because of everything he had to go through, but he's still a prat.
Yes, and he has aspirations. Like he wants to be so much better than he is. He's just utterly incapable of doing that because of how terrible he is at pretty much everything, and just a terrible person. Whereas Lister is the leader of the show, but he doesn't really have that kind of end goal. He just essentially wants to chill out and have a curry, and that would be fine with him. Whereas Rimmer has like ideas way above his station, so you're rooting for the guy, but you know that it'll never happen, and it's probably a good thing it doesn't happen. We find out that at the end of the season he becomes captain, kind of, but only when the ship is falling apart. Yeah, and that's what would happen. I feel like if he was given a whole crew anyway.
Yeah, and I feel like I summed it up in the first episode here, which I really like my description that I came up with, where Rimmer is all ambition but no ability, and Lister is all ability but no ambition.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wouldn't say Lister is all ability. He's like more than Rimmer, certainly.
Well, I mean, there is so many parts in the show, like throughout the show, that shows that Lister is very competent and knowledgeable whenever he sets his mind to something, like because he's able to do all this electronic stuff, and he comes up with a lot of these plans that work. Like with the Inquisitor, he's the one that rebuilt Crichton after after he appeared in the second season episode, and then he came back as a regular cast member. Like in the very fast paced scroll, there's a sentence about how Lister repaired Crichton, but he wasn't able to match his original personality, which that was their explanation why it's played by a different actor.
I guess I'm basing it on we don't see him do stuff, but then that's the lack of ambition. Because like he has it's not even just technical ability. He has the personable nature of even with robots, with Bob the Scutter. He has all these plans like, I'll form a little bond with Bob. I'll give him some WD-40 in payment for Vindaloo. And like that's
and I imagine
I hadn't even considered.
And I wouldn't be surprised if he's the one that's reprogrammed the programmable virus in this.
Maybe.
Although I guess that's not the best example, because even though the programmable virus does eat the skin of the potatoes, it ends up eating the clothes and hair of everybody around it, which I think that was my favorite scene of the episode, I think.
Very memorable. But that's something we talk about a lot over on Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, where we're talking about, in that they're trying to cure Alzheimer's by making sharks more intelligent, and they do too good of a job. They make the sharks too intelligent, and like the effects there are less drastic than they are here. So at least the reprogramming the virus did too good of a job. It doesn't just eat potato skins; it eats anything of that kind of level, except for eyebrows. It does not eat eyebrows. They stay where they are. They remain intact.
They must not have had any, drag show makeup artists that are well versed at covering up eyebrows.
Yeah, I feel like they'd lucky it didn't take off the fingernails and the teeth and everything else. Where would it have ended? That would be that's the horror episode of Red Dwarf. It's like cabin fever for Red Dwarf.
It removes their skin and they're
Yeah.
just muscle and bone. It's the body horror episode. But I also love the way that scene was shot too, because it's all in the edits, and it's so fast paced, and like if you're watching it with an eye for how they're shooting it, you can clearly see that, okay, there's the cut, and now he has the ripped pant leg, and now the camera goes over there, and then he takes the hat off and half his hair is missing. But it's just so fast paced and well done. Like I really appreciated that shot, and also I did like the progression and the build up whenever, the payoff and then the additional kind of capper on the joke, where the payoff is the two of them walking down the hallway, just completely naked and bald, holding their junks, and Rimmer shakes the captain's hand, and then there's the beat, and then you see that the virus has moved onto the captain.
It's great. I mean, you say it's fast paced. It kind of has to be with this show.
Even though it is like a 2-part episode, which, and again, like going back to that time loop scene, that kind of feels like filler. It's almost like they had too much story for one episode, but they didn't have quite enough story for a 2-part episode.
I feel like they had enough story for one per episode, and then put in a bunch of sketches, a bunch of skits, to fill out the rest of it. Which, I mean, this is a very fast-paced show. You've said on other episodes there's like an A plot, which it can sometimes take 2/3 of the episodes to get to the A plot, and that's the case here. Like I signed up for this episode because it's called Pete, and because of who Pete is, what Pete becomes. That's the end of the episode. There's so long to get to before we meet. And so when we start, I thought that the potato virus was its own whole episode, was in my memory. Like that's just one. That's the A story, is like sent to the brig and then do this virus of potatoes, and the B at the end is like, oh, the captain's got it now, and that's the end of the. That's how that episode ends. But that's just like a little tiny chunk of this, and the whole bit with the basketball with the guards, that could be a whole episode. That's just a little chunk at the start. There's so much in this 45 minutes of this double episode. There's so much going on. So many.
It's almost like this is kind of a sketch comedy episode of Red Dwarf, where there's just a bunch of little mini sketches, and that is kind of part of a lot of Red Dwarf, but I feel like it's more pronounced here, especially with the 2-part formats, and like Lister with the connect the dots, trying to find the one number, and then he reveals and it's just a pail and a shovel.
Yeah, little bucket and spade. Yeah,
and Rimmer playing checkers with himself, turning the board around.
Yeah, and then you then have is that the same scene where he insults the captain a lot, or is it just the same location?
No, that's in the next one. Like right after that, that's whenever they're given the 2 meals, and
oh yes, yeah,
and Rimmer is going off this. Chris Berry does this great almost monologue just of him describing the food, and this tastes like how I imagine. If my grandmother's buttocks were praised and put on a plate.
It's like two noses in gravy kind of thing. Yeah. And
yeah, I could have swore it sneezed.
Yeah, let's just let all that play out, watches him eat it, describes disgusting stuff, knowing full well he has Bob the Scutter coming along with a 6-pack of lager, a chicken vindaloo, and a brown bag of poppadoms. Enough to share. Feel like plenty to share. But no.
Yeah, and I feel like this, I know in the early series that, there is a lot of, vindaloo and curry mentioned, but I feel like this series he mentions poppadoms a lot more than in any of the previous series.
It's a very British sci-fi show. Yeah. That's the classic takeaway. The classic, like, you prove, as they talk about later in the episode, you prove you're tough by having the spiciest curry you can handle. Like, real men have a vindaloo. Vindaloo's not that great. But yeah, it's a very British stereotype, increased by Red Dwarf, shall we say. Yeah, poppadoms are a staple.
Yeah, and then, after that's whenever they go on the next Canary mission, which, that's kind of another thing that's, I wasn't fond of, and it is disappointing, especially because, we kind of briefly mentioned Kachansky, and she really it really feels like she gets short shrift this entire series.
Yep. Yeah, it's not great that she's like the only, well, unless you count second Holly, she's like the main female character in the show, prominent female character, and yeah, she doesn't get a lot to do. When she does get stuff to do, she gets like relegated to having the sexual magnetism virus having its effects on her, so she fancies Alyssa for a bit, and she fancies Rimmer for a bit. And here, when she sees the time one, she's like, "Oh, could that give me a boob job?" It's not great. And yeah, so she doesn't have a lot to do for most of it. I think towards the end,
and even it, like, later in the episode, like, everyone is wearing like their prison jumpsuits, and then she has this like sparkly red top on, like she has this fashion top.
Yeah, that whole scene in the warehouse where they're having the meal is odd. We're not there yet. We'll get there. But it's a very odd setup as to, like, why there? How long did they spend setting this up? Well, they got the time one, I guess, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Maybe they just zapped the area and the meal appeared. That's just what it happened to be. But we did actually skip over another kind of protracted gag of Lister on the pipe, trying to contact. And he gets the wrong number with the Chinese laundry, but they're tapping for ages. That's another it's like time loop kind of moment of, like, this gag's going for a long time. They are just filling time.
Although I did think that was, another, like, I liked those bits in the episode, but at the same time, I can see that they do feel like just filler. And if you took a lot of those out, and like if you even just shorten the basketball scene, you could have fit this entire thing into a single episode.
Yes, there's only so long we need to spend watching a group of people pretend to have erections, trying to fit us. I feel like we got it. Although, is this the first time we've seen Crichton shirtless? I wasn't sure, but he's like playing basketball. He's like got naked Crichton skin, but it's just like he looks like the Thing, basically.
It looks really weird.
He does, and it looks like what he's wearing wouldn't fit underneath his regular Crichton body.
It looks much more poofy.
Yeah. I like that they put the effort in to make it like, hey, this is Crichton, this is his basketball mode. So maybe he can't take off the metal, and instead he wants to appear like he's playing sports, or he puts something on over the top to make him look more sport-like. So like, I'm like skins. I'm letting his skins. But they couldn't do skins because of Kachansky.
Yeah. And then they go on this Canary mission and they find the time wand. And I do like the concept of the time wand and the way that they explain it, that it basically, steals time from one place and can give it to another. And they talk about how they could use it to reduce to make their 2-year sentence fly by in a second.
A good idea.
Yeah. And it is kind of weird, and like I appreciate that they have Holly here, but he does feel kind of extraneous, and especially like in this scene especially, because it's like he's just on a black screen. It's like I have no concept of where Holly is appearing from. because I know that he's kind of in the Watch, but it doesn't. In this scene especially, they don't really communicate that he's appearing from the Watch, and I don't like. Kind of looking back, I don't even like Lister's not even in this part of the scene, and I believe that Lister is the one with the Holly Watch.
I mean, I wasn't paying much attention to where he was coming from, but I think I did see like a little bit of a head on a watch on someone's wrist. So whoever that may have been.
Yeah,
what time they-
the second time that he pops up, like he pops up
Okay.
in the second episode, and that one it's clearly he's showing up on Lister's Holly Watch. But
Okay.
here it's like he just kind of appears on this solid black screen, and
Maybe
it's
Crichton has some kind of an internal Holly screen in his head somewhere. He can just that's just to Crichton in his brain.
yeah,
I have nothing to back that up. It's just speculation. How could
yeah,
this possibly
it's
work?
just like Holly's coming from nowhere. He's coming from the void.
Yeah, talking about Queen's Park Rangers. Again, another very British reference of watching QPR play away. I hate football, soccer, whatever. But just a really random little football joke in this sci-fi show. That's his go-to reference. So, a being who has been like conscious, present for however far this is set in the future, and his reference is QPR playing away from 3 million years ago. Sure, why not?
And I do kind of like, and this is another gag that's kind of hit and miss for me. I do like the gag that they have with the with the day players, the group of missing Canary squad members, and they do the whole gag, mainly just the one head guy, where he stops and starts talking and talks about the where he's just warning them of the time wand. But I didn't so much like the gag whenever Crichton uses it on Kachansky and Kat and turns them into kids, and then turns them back into adults with 70s hair, and then turns their clothes into the 70s.
Yeah, that seemed inconsistent. But then he's figuring it out, I guess. But yeah, it's not.
And he also says that it's your clothes have reverted to a time in your past, but the 70s were not the cat's past at all.
Definitely weren't. And I feel like if in Kachansky's past, when she was that age in the 70s, she probably wouldn't have been wearing those clothes. She would have been a child, I guess. But
she wouldn't have existed yet.
This is true.
Because even I don't know what year Red Dwarf was set at in the beginning, but it was still in the future, like far in the future, like at least like 2100 or somewhere around there. And this is alternate universe Kachansky as well.
Well, then maybe alternate universe, that makes sense. Maybe her 70s outfit would have been 20 years prior to.
Yeah, their explanation is that Kachansky, in Kachansky's universe, they had a 70s revival whenever she was a teenager, and the cat's evolution, the cats went through the 70s at some point as well.
Maybe, or like the time one just picked up on, because it just picked up on Kachansky's fashion and applied it to cat as well. I don't know. But the actress who played young Kachansky is Holly Earl, and she is still acting today. She's been in a bunch of stuff. So if that's unusual, because the one who played young Cat, that's not the case. This is his only credit. What's his name? Was he? Perry Michael. But yeah, Holly Earl has been in a bunch of stuff. She was in like 9 episodes of Cuckoo and Beowulf and Humans, and yeah, loads of stuff. So just that's good that she's carried on working and has a good career.
Yeah, and that tends to be the case with a lot of child actors. You have a small percentage of them that goes on to do other things, and then a lot of them where they just do like 1 or 2 roles and then leave acting.
She was, oh my god, she's in a shark movie. Hang on. She's in a film that we've covered on Deep Sea the podcast. She's in Shark Bait from 2022, which, was she the lead in that? She was the lead. She was Nat. Great. It's not a good film. Shark Bait. I didn't even bring her up because she's in this. I just clicked on her. Hey, she's in stuff. No, Shark Bait. Original title was Jet Ski. And it's about a bunch of kids young adults, teenagers, 20-year-olds, whatever they are. They steal a jet ski, a couple of jet skis, and get stranded in the middle of nowhere on one jet ski with a shark around the jet ski, and she's the lead. And it's not a good film. It's one of the worst straight to streaming shark movies. It has so much premise, so much potential. Anyway, apologies for the shark-based diversion. It's what happens when you talk to me.
Yeah, and there's also these moments with with the bullies of the Canaries, the prison you got Kill Crazy and the big guy whose name I don't remember.
Is it Baxter?
Baxter, yeah. Baxter bullying Cat. And I do think that this is kind of a weird moment, especially because it's like they have this moment where Baxter is supposed to be like breaking Cat's fingers, but he's just curling them down in the natural way.
Just bending them the way they're supposed to be bent.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Danny John Jules sells that he's breaking his fingers. They just go by his acting and his reaction. You believe it. So.
Mm. And they also have jumping ahead a little bit, I think it's so bizarre that with this time wand, the captain gets a hold of the time wand, and he's like, we can't figure out how to use it, so you need to fix this. And then he gives it back to them, even though the notes he has on Rimmer is just Rimmer - imbecile, 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 imbecile.
Maybe he's hoping that Rimmer will kill himself with the time wand.
Do you know what would happen if this fell into the wrong hands? Here.
Here, you have nothing but wrong hands. You're made of wrong hands. Every element you have of you is wrong.
And we should talk a little bit about Birdman as well, with the fake bird.
Yeah, well, when they're being bullied by Baxter and they use the time wand on his dinner and turn it into a live chicken, I was like, oh yeah, that's Pete. That's where the bird came from. It's a chicken. And then he cut to Birdman with a sparrow. And I, wait a minute, there's two birds in this episode, and only one of them becomes a dinosaur. Hang on, this feels underwritten or overwritten. This could have been simplified to this is where the bird came from. It's this bird, and yeah, but no, they have Birdman, Ian Masters, and his sparrow called Pete. I like Birdman. He seems like he's been in there a long time, but they've forgotten he's in there. Yeah,
he's kind of a great, kind of crazy person, but he does take it a little bit too over the top. Like, they turn Pete into a giant Tyrannosaurus Rex, who's a mix of animatronics and really bad, yeah, really bad 1999 CGI.
Yeah. They could do a lot better back then, but they didn't.
Hmm. And he sneezes on Birdman, and he's just holds up and he's like, would you like some seed?
You can't have a dinosaur sneeze on somebody and not make me think of Jurassic Park. It's just not. You can't do that. That happens in Jurassic. They shouldn't be doing that. You can't. Like, a dinosaur's going to sneeze on a guy. No one's seen that before. I was going to think of the many better animated dinosaurs in Jurassic Park.
Although I do think that the real head that they built doesn't look that bad. I think it looks all right.
A 1999 BBC budget. This looks fantastic. Something paid for by my parents' TV license at the time. I'm glad they didn't spend any more money on it than they did.
And then another kind of big question that I have that doesn't make sense to me is they managed to have this inflatable pool that looks like a a food dish complete with the word dino on the front, almost like they were expecting this to happen.
Spent a lot of time prepping for something, prepping this thing that, like, I have so many questions. Like, okay, where did the bowl come from? What is this bowl originally for? Why does it say dinosaur on the side of it? Where did you get so much curry? So quickly, how long is this? Like, you have a dinosaur beating down the door. How thick is this door? You have enough time to prepare a vat of curry. It's like, I know it's the future. I get it's the future. I want to see every step of this process. I just want to see
why do they have an entire cow which does not? I'm confused if
real.
the cow is supposed to be alive or if the cow is supposed to be a dead cow.
Or just like hard resin, just a solid cow. If they frozen alive cow just whole. Why would they do that? Do they use every part of the cow? Like, we'll just do the whole thing. Just freeze the whole thing.
And then they have the bits, which, I love the setup, but the punchline, I'm a little bit less fond of. After the dinosaur eats the curry, they have this slow pan up, and I love the slow pan up of just the dinosaur sitting there just completely still, and I feel like that is a great setup. But then they have the CGI widening of the eyes, like the Photoshop stretch feature.
Yeah, this is a very, very silly episode of Red Dwarf, and often very serious show. But no, this is like the whole concept of what dinosaurs eating the time wand. Firstly, I hate that the dinosaur eats the time wand. Crichton throws the time wand to Bob the Scutter, and then Bob the Scutter gets eaten. That's so contrived as to why did he throw it to Bob? Why did the T-Rex eat the robot? Doesn't matter.
Yes, the second half of the episode this entire 2-part episode just feels very sitcom tropey. Like everything feels like it's just set up for them to walk down the corridor and have the next discussion with the captain. And I think this, after the curry, I feel like this discussion with the captain is my least favorite part of the episode. It's just so contrived, so it just doesn't make any sense to me. Like I get it because it feels like it's cartoon logic, but
yes,
Red
100%
Dwarf
is cartoon logic.
Yeah, Red Dwarf previously, it has a lot of solid sci-fi concepts in it, and it has good comedy writing, and this just feels so lazy Scooby-Doo writing. It's where the dinosaur ate too spicy vindaloo, crashes through the wall, eats all the mint chalk ice cream, and all the orange popsicles, and drinks all the fizzy soda because apparently they can't say any name brand soda.
But they said Coca-Cola a bunch of times. And then the last one is like, I ordered the fizzy non-brand drink that we had that I liked. It's odd. But I thought it's either cartoon logic or just wild exaggeration. So when he talks about the tidal wave of diarrhea, like, no, there's only so much. There's only so much that could be in there. The dinosaur didn't finish the vindaloo.
The dinosaur was not that big. The dinosaur was maybe 10 feet tall. That's not enough space for what sounds like about 4 tons of food.
Yeah, there's, we're not talking about portals here. Or like, there's the other half of your season, the T-Rex is not a TARDIS. There's not like an infinite amount of space. There's only so much space you can have in there. It's not. No. I can get if the captain was at the front of the battalion trying to sneak up on the T-Rex, and this happened. Yes, he would have been in some distress. And the fact that there was Bob the Scutter,
Yeah, and the fact that they added that's kind of the punchline where it starts off with the massive burp from the drink, which knocked the first battalion 20 feet away.
Yeah.
And then the second battalion was sneaking up behind him. And of course, Lister jumps in with the "oh no," and then of course, and then after that we get the other, completely unrelated random sketch of Archie, which is
Yes. Okay. Yeah, thank you. a different episode happens in the middle of this episode of Red Dwarf. Like Crichton's
It's like,
oh
oh
yeah,
yes, let's remember that Crichton is in the women's section of the jail with the apparently, seemingly the only other woman. I think there is like one or two others, but it's practically just Kachansky is the only other woman in prison.
I mean, hey, the writers of the show also wrote that, so it makes sense. Like, why they write more women? Yeah, it's like Crichton has made himself a penis called Archie. No one's been told about this prior to this, and Archie's got it. And this, I don't know, this feels like it doesn't fit in anywhere. It doesn't really add anything other than you get the alien sequence later with Cat, where like the penis is bursting through his chest, or his shirt, I hope.
Yeah, that's another just weird element, and before they have that, they have the transport with the canaries, making fun of the Tyrannosaurus with the little arms, and how Kill Crazy wants to fight it.
Yep.
And then
T-Rex.
and then we get the alien scene, and Cat's making it sound like it's inside his body, but then the dialogue from the other people is, oh, that Archie must have snuck inside his pocket, so it seems like it's just in his clothes.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of comedy in Crichton having made himself a penis, and like, don't mind, it's just my penis is on the loose. It's great. That's a funny bit. That's a funny setup. It's just, why is it here? Why is it in this episode? It feels like this is a very Lister and Rimmer heavy episode, and like, okay, we need something for Cat, Crichton, and Kachansky to do. What have we got? What ideas we come up with that we didn't flesh out into the whole episode? I don't know. Crichton made himself a penis. I mean, we can do that without Lister and Rimmer, and that's the B story.
And then
doesn't tie in.
Yeah, like almost none of this ties in, other than some of it's connected to the Time Wand. Like the next gag is that Baxter and Kill Crazy grab the Time Wand and try to use it on Lister and Rimmer, but they apparently put their bodies out of phase with time, and so we have this scene of the two of them trying to beat them up, and Lister and Rimmer just stand there completely unaffected until we get the payoff. Like 2 minutes later in the next scene with them walking down the corridor and getting yelled at by the captain yet again, which I think this is like the 8th or 9th time that's happened in this. And then they have this, physical comedy, which is kind of funny, but at the same time, it's like the cartoon logic here with them just putting their smushed up lips, which I don't remember. I don't think Baxter or Kill Crazy ever really did.
No.
Like, it didn't seem like they ever grabbed their mouths, but they have this moment where they put their faces inches from the captain and just are making this like smushed kissy face at him.
I mean, I will credit Craig Charles and especially Chris Barry for how much they got into the physical comedy of this, and the real Chris Barry, especially with his full body leap fall backwards. The fact that that's in the opening credits. So much of these two episodes is in the opening credits for this season, and just from these two. I think it's like more than half of the shots are just from these two, because there's so many different non sequiturs from in these two episodes. I love that kind of back flop he does.
And then we find out, that Baxter and Kill Crazy have turned themselves into gorillas.
Yep, great. Here for it. Not really how evolution works, but fine. It doesn't matter. And the T-Rex is just asleep. It's having a nap. Asleep on his back. That's it. They say that they've managed to sedate the T-Rex, and they want Lister Rimmer to go in and turn it back into a sparrow. No, kill the T-Rex. You've sedated it. Kill the T-Rex. Why?
Yeah, and then
Why do you want this sparrow you didn't know existed? Why do you want that back? Kill the T-Rex. Eat it.
Yeah, and then they're able to revive Birdman and turn the T-Rex back into a sparrow, and then they destroy the Time Wand so it can never be used again. And then they walk past and do yet another cartoonish double take at the dinosaur egg, which again doesn't make logical sense that a T-Rex that's been out for 24 hours would have laid an egg that is already ready to hatch.
They saw Roland Emmerich's Godzilla and they thought, hey, we should do that too. That's all that happened there. Everyone loved that Godzilla movie that no one liked. I liked it. But yeah, it's bad. It's more sitcom writing. You feel like when it wakes up, it makes too much noise and it deflates the captain's souffle. Like that's the only thing we're missing here. Sitcom wise.
Yeah,
no,
we have
a tongue massage.
Yeah, the captain's getting a massage and the masseuse conveniently walks away, and then
What happens?
baby T-Rex comes in and starts licking him, and of course, because this is a sitcom and has sitcom rules, the captain doesn't look up, and he's just like, oh, your technique is so good, but it feels awfully rougher than usual.
You sound like a dinosaur now for some reason. You're not just doing this silently. Your feet, they don't sound like feet, they sound like claws now.
And of all the things that happens, it's not the tidal wave of diarrhea and getting hit on the head with a scudder.
And having all of his hair and skin eaten away, not skin, but all his hair and clothes eaten away. All of which in the space of like a few hours, perhaps.
Yeah. It's being licked by a baby T-Rex is what sends him into post-traumatic shock to where he is unable to speak anymore, and so the last scene is just the cards, and the final gag or the final punchline is that the whole 12 months, and then he taps the desk. Not you, me. I'll see you in 12 months. Credits.
There we are. That's it. This is the most sitcom episode of Red Dwarf, definitely. Most classic sitcom. Yeah. The Crichton's penis never comes back, I feel like. It's just this episode?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
As far as I know, because I know there's I think it was the episode before this was the Crichton TV, which is another very problematic episode.
Yep. Sure is.
And then after this, they go into Back to Earth and then Series 10, and both of those, it's like they just completely ignore the fact that this series ever happened.
But is there some merit to, did this season kill Red Dwarf for a little while? Because it took a decade, they took 10 years off. I don't know what the reaction to this was at the time, but this being one of people's least favorite episodes.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't help that, and I actually forgot. For some reason, even while watching this, I forgot that that Rimmer is human this entire season, because he's the Rimmer that was resurrected by the nanobots. Because the Rimmer in the last season went off to become Ace Rimmer, the next Ace Rimmer.
Yes, sure, Smoke Me Together, yeah. I always get Ace Rimmer confused with... There's Blackadder had a similar character, I think. Doesn't matter. Anyway.
And then whenever you get to Back to Earth and Series 10, then Rimmer is back to being Hologram Rimmer with no explanation of what happens to the rest of the crew again.
I feel like that's going to be the better kind of Rimmer. You need that innate helplessness. Like he can't interact with stuff. You need just that level of annoyance because he's perpetually frustrated that he can't do anything. And so
also there's that latent guilt of having killed everybody, and the fact that everybody and himself, which this Rimmer technically doesn't have.
Yeah, this is just the original. This is how he always was. This is why everyone hates him. Yeah.
Yeah, and then that's the end of this episode, and this is the last, really the only time that we get to talk about the rest of the crew, which they get rid of the rest of the crew pretty quickly because they send them into prison for everything that they did, and ignoring the fact of everything they did that was positive, and just focus on the negative stuff. But yeah, this is just a weird prison episode. We kind of skipped over, two other like little bits, and which I almost thought that you would have brought up. But there's two moments where Bob the Scudder is going by and he's whistling the Great Escape theme.
Great Escape. Yep, I did write that down. We went past it, so I didn't want to circle back. But yeah, I liked that moment.
And there's also a weird bit. I think it's during the basketball game where they have pop music, which feels so out of place.
Yes, it does. I agree. One moment that I did get a genuine laugh out of me though is when they're trying to they find the time wand and they're going to smuggle it back in, and Crichton's like, "Don't worry, leave it to me. I have an excellent place to conceal it." And you think, "Oh, he's gonna stick it up his bum," but no, you cut to massive fake forehead. It's just hidden in there, and no one notices. That's very well done. That's great. I like that a lot.
Yeah, this episode did make me laugh a handful of times, but I feel like I rolled my eyes more often than I laughed.
It makes you laugh, but not in a way that you don't feel good about it. You feel, oh, I feel bad for finding this funny as an adult.
Yeah, there's a lot of great physical comedy, but it really just leans too hard on classic in a bad way sitcom tropes, like all the worst sitcom tropes.
Yeah. Was this still the same writers for this season?
Well, I know that I think Rob Grant left 2 seasons ago. I think he left on season 6 was his last season.
How does, as someone who's watched it more recently, how does season 7 hold up without him?
I actually relatively liked series 7. I did like Kachansky and her introduction more than Kachansky in prison. I did like her character. I like Chloe Annette. I think she's great. I wish they had given her more stuff to do. I wish they made her a better character, because I think she could have fit into the cast. They just, unfortunately, weren't able to write enough good stuff for her, and so they wrote her out, or she left, or a mixture of both. Whenever they got back to Earth and onward. But yeah, I didn't mind series 7, and also, that it does have a good kind of redemption for Rimmer. Like, we get a lot of positive stuff for the Rimmer character, which is nice for him and for Chris Berry.
Yeah. I see Chris Berry how much he stays either. Actually. What is Chris Berry doing? I know that you don't see any of them. I guess they're all still doing Red Dwarf.
Yeah, they were supposed to film this past October, but it got, I think, pushed to this summer. I think it's still happening. It's like another. I think it's supposed to be another like movie season, where it's like a 2 or 3 parts episode.
Okay. Just seeing what else they have credited at the moment, and it seems to mainly be Red Dwarf. But Craig Charles.
Well, I know Craig Charles. I think he focuses on his music. Like, he's a DJ, I believe.
Okay. I knew him mainly from hosting Robot Wars back in the day, and then he was on Coronation Street, which my parents would watch. And I know you talked about already, but Robert Llewellyn from Scrap Heap Challenge. He's always just I used to love that show. And Danny John Jules as being one of the puppeteers in Labyrinth.
Yeah, he was in the fire, one of the Fireys. But yeah, I think that wraps this up. Do you have anything else to say about this episode or about Red Dwarf in general?
I don't. I'm looking forward to you talking about some of the future episodes beyond this that I have no knowledge of whatsoever. I want to know what happens in those. That'll be fun.
I watched, the episode I'll be talking about in 2 weeks' time. I watched that kind of back to back with this one, and I enjoyed that one much better than this one.
Yes. Graham McTavish is in this episode as well. While in the Hobbit films, he's always a fun presence. Very, very iconic Scottish actor, Graham McTavish, one of the most Scottish actors, with one of the most Scottish names. So he's the guy at the start that no one likes. The other guard, I forget his name.
Yeah, he's the prison warden.
Warden Ackerman. He's well cast as being an angry man. Graham McTavish. But yeah, I would also give you my thoughts on Doctor Who if you wanted them, which is I don't have many. I started watching with Christopher Eccleston. I stopped watching mid Matt Smith, and haven't really gone back. So David Tennant is my Doctor.
Yeah, in my Doctor Who watch, my new Who watch through, I just finished David Tennant's last season, and I'm just about to go on to his specials. His last few episodes before he regenerates into Matt Smith.
So when you say David Tennant's last season, which one are you talking about?
Well, his first last season, yes. Season 4.
Yeah, I think nothing against Matt Smith.
David Tennant, he didn't have a full season. Wasn't he just in for 2 or 3 specials?
I don't know. I generally haven't watched any of it since mid Matt Smith, and I had no problem with Matt Smith. It just didn't fit in with my routine anymore. Saturday nights didn't have time for Doctor Who anymore, and just haven't gone back to it. I think it may have had something to do with that's when I started dating my now wife, and she's like, I don't like Doctor Who, so I just kind of started watching. I wasn't that first. My mum would always talk about watching it with her sister, my aunt, and they literally hid behind the sofa when the Daleks came on. So whenever you hear people talking about that kind of thing, that did happen. It happened to my mum and my aunt. Yeah, they still watch it. Well, they watched it for Jodie Comer. I don't know. Well, not Jodie Comer. Jodie Whittaker.
Whittaker.
Yeah, I don't know if they watched it for Ncuti Gatwa. Don't know. I feel like, knowing my parents, they might not have stuck with that for some reason. That I won't go into. Which is a shame, because Ncuti Gatwa is excellent. Anyway.
Yeah, so I've heard.
Anyway.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining me, even though this was, not necessarily the best episode of the series.
It had a dinosaur in it, that's all I need. 2 dinosaurs. So, happy to talk about anything with dinosaurs.
And why don't you take a moment and let people know where else you can be found online?
Great, well, yes, thank you. It's thank you for having me. It's mainly over at Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, where myself and co-host Mark Hoffmeyer, we love Deep Blue Sea, and so we've dedicated an entire podcast talking about it and similar films. So we've been through the entire Deep Blue Sea trilogy, scene by scene, and we talked about some Deep Blue Sea adjacent films. That's films directed by Rennie Harlan, featuring sharks or aquatic action. And then we did a whole season on another podcast stream of Con Air, doing that chapter by chapter. We talked about that for 40 episodes. Got to the end of that and really wanted to talk about Deep Blue Sea again. And so we've gone back to the start and are doing Deep Blue Sea chapter by chapter again. Because why not? Because we wanted to. And we're about a third of the way through doing that again. But we're now doing that's every third episode. So we do a chapter of Deep Sea and then 2 other films that are related to it in some way, and then another chapter of Deep Sea. And that seems to be going well, having a good time. Yeah, we've just done episodes on the Deep Sea episode coming out next week. The Last Breath is a 2024 shark movie that's actually really good. That is well worth your time. So there's an episode on that coming soon, and Sharknado 4 coming out soon as well. That kind of thing. Stuff with sharks in it. If you like sharks, check out Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, because we like sharks too.
And apparently, so does Hollywood, because there are tons of movies about sharks.
Keep making them, we'll keep covering them. And yep, that's a deal we've made.
And as always, I am Bubbawheat, and you can find me everywhere on social media where I'm at Bubbawheat. these days I'm most active on Threads, but anywhere, if you find me, it's 95% chance it's me. You can shoot me a message and I will most likely see it. And we also have a Facebook group, It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group, and you can join that to discuss episodes as they come out, as well as have discussions about any other time loops in media, TV, movies, audiobooks, novels, video games. All that stuff is welcome there. And if you enjoy this show, and we'd really appreciate if you rate it 5 stars on whatever app you're listening to. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and if you're able to leave a written review, we would love that as well, because that really helps increase our presence in the search algorithms and helps more people find this show and helps us continue to grow. And until next time, smoke me a kipper and I'll regenerate before breakfast next week.